All right, guys. Well, long time no see, but welcome back to Reviews by Hunter. That's me. Today we're talking about The Odyssey, the newest Christopher Nolan film. I got to see this over the weekend, and you know what? Despite all the criticisms before the film was even released, especially talking about, casting choices, and maybe this is going to be the first big Christopher Nolan flop, I really enjoyed this film, and I'm excited to talk to you guys about it today. Let's get into it. So, of course, it is The Odyssey, directed by Christopher Nolan, a reimagining of Homer's The Odyssey. This budget came in at $250 million, so this is a big budgeted movie. And the synopsis, this is straight from Google, a story that follows the Greek hero Odysseus and his grueling 10-year journey home to Ithaca after the Trojan War. So, admittedly, I was not really familiar with Homer's Odyssey. Like, I've heard of it, but I don't believe I've ever actually read it before. So this was all new to me, basically. I, too, ended up becoming skeptical of casting choices, mostly that were rumors, specifically the one where it was rumored that Elliot Page was going to play Achilles, and then Elliot Page doesn't even end up playing Achilles. So that, I'm not going to be one of those people that you're going to hear that the casting took away from my enjoyment of the film, okay? But now that we got that out of the way, this was a really good action fantasy adventure film. I thought that it was really good pacing too for being a long movie at 2 hours 52 minutes. But I never felt bored, and the story is fairly simple to follow. A lot of scenes have the benefit of being able to breathe because of that, so that we can take everything in. Like, as an example, the adventures of Odysseus and his men. We see them go through hell in an attempt to get back home. We, as the audience, get to feel like how intense this journey was, as opposed to just being straight up told. A lot of movies will tell, not show, and I like that this movie's really the opposite. And we get to see the storms that they go through, like violent storms, fighting different monsters that all look really good and well done. You have soldiers of Odysseus dying left and right. They go through starvation. They have tests of loyalty and faith and a lot of desperation, particularly from Odysseus's men. And while all this is going on and Odysseus is trying to get back home, you have Telemachus, played by Tom Holland, who is the son of Odysseus, and he never actually knew his father, but he strongly believes that Odysseus, his dad, still lives, and nothing is going to shatter that belief. You have Penelope, Odysseus' wife, who is the acting queen of Ithaca, who is being pressured to choose a new husband. She's being pressured to choose a new suitor. And these suitors are just menaces, right? They're basically violating Odysseus' home and its moral codes while Odysseus is gone, because they all believe that he's dead, right? But you have Robert Pattinson, who plays Antinous. He's one of the main suitors. Oh my gosh, by the way, Robert Pattinson does a fantastic job, as always. Just no matter what role you give him, Robert Pattinson is going to do a good job. But these suitors are wasting all of the food. They're feasting all the time. They're using all of the resources. They're treating people like dirt that they look at as being beneath them. Although one of the biggest things that gets mentioned in the film is something called Zeus's Law, which is the idea that you should treat strangers with hospitality and treat them the way that you would want to be treated, especially because you don't know if they are a god in disguise, right? It's kind of like this this way of keeping people, having a certain level of morals. But this gets abandoned when Odysseus is gone. So you have that plot going on in the background as well, with different suitors trying to basically get Penelope to marry them so that they can assume power and the throne, right? And they don't care. They do not care about Telemachus. They do not care about people that come in begging for food. It's a complete this home has been flipped on its head, right? And so I actually really thought this was well done. I wanted to see most of those suitors get their asses kicked throughout most of this film. There's a scene where one of them is kicking Odysseus' old dog because they just have no respect. But moving forward, I wanted to talk about the sound design of this film. The way sound is used in this film was so good. It was so awesome, particularly the scene with the Cyclops. I had to talk about the scene with the Cyclops, man. Dude, They're trapped inside this cave, okay, because they land on this island. They're looking for food. They find a sheep, and one of the soldiers goes to shoot it. Odysseus says, no, 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 no. Sheep are always in herds. Let's follow it. Well, they follow it straight into the den of a cyclops, and this cyclops is terrifying. It is this just giant, ugly, twisted-looking creature. Did I mention this already, that it was done with, not with CGI, but apparently done with a 60-foot puppet was used. The practical effects were used to do the Cyclops. There was a lot of practical effects actually used in this, of course, in a Christopher Nolan film. But I love that. I love that. It looked really good, and it honestly, that whole scene played out like a horror film. The Cyclops is like casually munching on soldiers, just like they're nothing to him, right? And so they come up with a plan to try and get out of this cave alive, right? So they stab the Cyclops in the eye while he was sleeping. And the Cyclops lets out this scream that was so primal and loud. I was genuinely a little spooked out there for a second. Hearing that in theaters, that Cyclops had some bass to it. And it's not just like a little 2-second, 3-second scream. Dude, it lasts a while. He is writhing, seething in pain. And then freaking turns out one of the soldiers hears him crying to his dad, Poseidon. That the Cyclops was a child of Poseidon. You'll have to excuse me. I'm not an expert on Greek mythology. But now the men, this is where the loyalty also comes into play, are pissed off at Odysseus when they do finally escape this cave, because they're like, well, now look what you've done. You pissed off a child of Poseidon. Now the seas will never be in our favor, because when they escape, the Cyclops, in my opinion, sort of taunts Odysseus by spitting out the shield of one of his men right at Odysseus. So what he does is he takes his bow, shoots the Cyclops again in the eye, angering Poseidon. What was interesting about this is the men throughout this movie complained to Odysseus that, you know, he's getting them killed, he doesn't care, blah, 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 blah. That was probably the one time Odysseus actually did, like, stand up for one of his men in a way that was kind of more fueled by emotion, right? Oh, you're going to taunt me? Bet, I'm going to shoot you in the eye. But his crew was pissed at him at that. After that moment, Odysseus is he's pretty much a stone cold, I wouldn't say stone cold, but he's a stoic leader. He's very much like, okay, well, we just lost a boat full of men, yes, but we don't have time to bury them. We don't have time to honor them. We got to move on to the next island, which every time they go to an island, they just get absolutely worked. They get the business. Dude, they go to an island where there's these giants in this full-plated armor, and these giants absolutely wreck them. Dude, this was like a scene from Attack on Titan, bro. This is why I would never want to live in a movie or anywhere where giants exist. These giants are just chopping them down like it's nothing. Like, I think I saw one giant take damage, and that's when Odysseus shoots one in the eye. But they devastated Odysseus' men, and they sink 2 ships while they're at it. Dude, that scene was crazy. There's a lot of them just hauling ass back to get to the boats, because every time they stop at an island, they are at a disadvantage. There's some new creature or tribe or monster that's waiting for them that they weren't prepared to deal with on this journey to try and get back to Ithaca. There's so much that happens in this film. I don't think I will probably be able to cover all of it, but I kind of just want to talk about some cool things that stood out to me, and that was certainly one of them. Don't mess with giants in full-plated armor. Upon further research, apparently, like in Greek mythology, they have a specific name that I'm forgetting, but I guess they're supposed to be man-eating giants. I don't remember them in the film eating people, but they definitely still were like, get the hell off our island. They didn't have to say anything, though. It was like on site, right? But moving on. So yeah, a lot of good sound design. The score throughout is done by Ludwig Göransson. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And incredibly well done, particularly at the climax of the film when Odysseus returns, and we'll talk about that later. But I thought the score throughout the film really did set the mood, help set the atmosphere for the time period that this is supposed to be taking place, in ancient Greece. A lot of instruments that, gave it that, I guess, ancient feel. And I was really into it. I want to talk about some standout scenes and some standout performances from my point of view, my opinion. The first thing I want to talk about is Robert Pattinson as Antinous. He's the leading suitor. He is, oh my God, Robert Pattinson plays a freaking bad guy that you just want to see get punched in the face so bad. Antinous is an absolute snake. He is a coward. This dude is trying his best to get Penelope to marry him. And at one point, I thought Penelope was about to break, and then she doesn't. And I was like, I like that. I like that character detail right there. Penelope's a real one. But like this guy, if he could betray you for fun, he's going to do it. He is really kind of the puppet master while Odysseus is away, right? He is one of the leading suitors that is abandoning Zeus's law. And he's also getting information about Penelope and how she's purposely stalling these marriage proposals because he one of the girls that works as like I guess she was a slave, was she not? Or was she like an assistant? I thought they were referred to as slaves for that time period. Anyways, he's with one of them, and she's supposed to be helping Penelope. She's supposed to be one of the aides of Penelope. So she's also a snake, but kind of turned that way by Antinous, and just Robert Pattinson's just gold. So just seeing him on screen every time, like, you want to see him get what's coming to him, which he does. And other things that stood out to me was the scene with him being trapped by the Cyclops, which I mentioned already. Just the whole thing. I think Christopher Nolan could do a horror film. I really do. Christopher Nolan comes out with a hour 45, 2-hour horror film. I'd watch it. That was good stuff. And then I'm jumping ahead quite a bit here, but when Odysseus returns to fight the suitors after being gone for years, oh my God, he comes back. There's not a lot of people left that are loyal to him. It's pretty much Odysseus, Penelope, his son Telemachus, played by Tom Holland, who also, I know I haven't talked a lot about him, but Tom Holland does good in this film. He does good. He's basically just trying to find out more and more information about his father throughout this film because, again, he believes that he is alive. And I like how he came across as a young kid who had a lot to learn, but he was brave. Telemachus was not a coward. Telemachus is not able to deal with the suitors while Odysseus is away because if he engages them in combat, he would face exile. And so he's having trouble finding a way to assume power without it blowing up in his family's face. So that is kind of the struggle that he's going through. My ADHD self and my stupid auditory processing issues thought they were saying Timotheus at some points. That I don't think they ever said that. It's Telemachus. If you hear me say that, I'm referring to Tom Holland's character. And we got to talk about, well, actually, you know what? Since we're already here, when Odysseus returns to fight the suitors, bro, he stays in disguise for a while. And basically the way that he reveals himself to everybody is Penelope says, all right, enough's enough. I'm going to set up this challenge, right? Because Odysseus was known for being able to string this bow that only he could string. And they still had the bow. She says, whichever one of you can string this bow and shoot it through 12 axes and hit the target the way Odysseus used to show off, because he's just that guy, I'll marry you. Of course, none of them can do it. Antinous doesn't even want to try. He tries to basically be like, well, this is pointless. You've made your point. And Odysseus is pretending to be a beggar, and of course they all make fun of him. And eventually, he gets his chance. He strings the bow. He does the thing, and he plucks it. And I guess Odysseus plucks his bow to warn his prey. This was shown to us earlier in the film. Well, he does the same thing here. He plucks his bow. And before one of the suitors that I wanted to see get his ass kicked the whole film for kicking that dog goes, "You're Odysseus," arrow right to the throat. He can't even get out the words, "You're Odysseus." Odysseus did not come to play. You're about to, you've made your bed, now you're going to lie in it. And Odysseus fights all of the suitors basically by himself. He tells Telemachus not to interfere because Telemachus would get exiled, and he wants Telemachus to be able to become king. But he gives them the business, bro. Like I said, the score during that scene was so good. It felt so intense. It just felt like the culmination of everything that has been coming to this boiling point throughout the whole film. So I know I just kind of jumped ahead there, but I really loved that scene. The fight choreography in the film was really, really well done. which brings me to my next standout scene / performance, and that's Agamemnon. Agamemnon was the king of Ithaca. Odysseus was his greatest general. Agamemnon orofarms in this film without actually doing anything. So hard. Played by Benny Safdie, I believe. He wears like this very dark, like all black armor with a bit more of like a giant helmet than like your usual soldier. But there's a scene with the Trojan horse, which I haven't even gotten to, where they finally open the gates to Troy, right? And Agamemnon is just standing there, like in the smoke, in the fog, just like, all right, you're screwed now, Troy. He doesn't draw his blade. He doesn't do anything crazy. He just walks. He just walks into Troy and lets his army swarm into there and take care of business. And every time they pan a shot to Agamemnon, he's just walking through Troy like, yeah, you guys are going to get this business. And they do. And it's badass. Unfortunately for Agamemnon, despite his amazing oro farming moments, he gets betrayed by his wife because he sacrificed their daughter when she was little. If I'm not mistaken, I believe because, in this setting, in this time period, sacrifices were meant to hold a lot of power. And I can't remember exactly what he was hoping by sacrificing the daughter. I think he just wanted his army to be favored more by the gods. That's what I'm thinking was implied. But the wife never forgot. So he returns home, right, after this long journey. Returns home long before Odysseus, right? However, there's a line in the movie, I think one of the gods said, some of you did return home, but maybe wished you hadn't. And it's because Agamemnon gets betrayed and stabbed in the throat, and that's the end of him. He's not in the film much, but when he is badass. Love it. Which is another thing I'd like to talk about. Some people were complaining that, some of the armor, fresh. Some of the armor in this film, it's not historically accurate, and they left things out of the Odyssey, and blah, 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 blah. Guys, last time I checked, this is like mythology, Greek mythology. This is not a documentary. This is a retelling, a reimagining of Homer's The Odyssey. None of that bothered me, okay? Really, throughout watching this, I'll get to some of the casting things that maybe bothered me a little bit, but for the most part, everybody does a good job. It looks good. And guess what, guys? I don't think there was a Cyclops back then. You know what I'm saying? I don't think we're going to find remaining bones of a Cyclops or any of the monsters or those freaking giants. I don't know why there were such historical purists before this film was ever released. I thought this was a good, really well-made quality film. Let's talk about a little bit of, I guess I already talked a little bit about those visuals that I liked. The film looks great throughout. Like, when they're sailing and they go through a storm, it's intense. Things are breaking and crashing, and men are, falling off the boats and dying, and at one point gets struck by lightning again, because the idea here is that Odysseus has angered the gods, and they're trying to stop him from getting home, I believe was the implication, although we never see Poseidon, we never see Zeus, but still, there's a reason also, though, for that, I think. But yeah, the costumes and armor looked good, and they get a lot of good shots of the sky, the sea, the different islands that they sail to, I think are really well done. There's a scene with, I believe she's a god, Circe, and this was one of the scenes where the men kind of betray Odysseus. They are like, we're going to go ahead and look for food. You stay here, though. Odysseus doesn't fight back. He says, all right, bet. Well, they go, and they are welcomed into the home of this lone woman. There's no one else around. She has so much food. And they're like, we need food. We're not going to hurt you, blah, 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 blah. They start eating this food, and all of a sudden, they can't stop eating the food. They keep eating. I'm pretty sure some of them had, like, tears in their eyes. It almost looked like the meat, too, was, like, pulling them into their plates. It was very creepy and off-putting. Again, I think Christopher Nolan could do a horror film, but I really loved that scene. They slowly start to be morphed into pigs. And it's just you watch the whole transformation. It's not like it cuts away and then the men are pigs. No, we have to sit there and watch them gorge themselves into torment, into excess. And she slowly it's very grotesque looking. It's really well done, though. It looks great. Man. I really enjoyed it. And of course, Odysseus comes to save their asses, as always. But man, again, there's so much to talk about in this film. I'm probably not going to cover all of it. I want to talk about some of the themes that stood out to me. Really, the biggest one was loyalty, right? Penelope staying loyal to Odysseus throughout everything, even when being tempted by all of these suitors. Telemachus, who never even knew his father, staying loyal. My overall thoughts of this film is that the Odyssey, it's a well-paced, action-adventure-packed film with great visuals, okay, and practical effects that really help with that immersiveness, right? We're so used to seeing sloppy CGI. This was a nice break from that. A score that sets the mood perfectly for what each scene asks of it, and a cast that all gets the job done in their respective roles, which I told you I'd talk about that. So I thought that the cast was very Hollywood, and I don't think, like, the good thing about that is you had a lot of quality actors and actresses, from Tom Holland to Rob Pattinson to Anne Hathaway to, who was the other one I liked in this film? Hold on, guys. We're going to do a quick little check here. There was another, Travis Scott actually did a pretty good job with the role that he was given. How come when I pull up the Odyssey cast, it does not come up? You got to be kidding me. Lupita Nyong'o, she played Helen of Troy. There were people making fun of her before this film came out. She has a small role. I didn't think she looked unattractive or anything. Again, Nolan kind of just went left field with his casting choices. Sometimes, John Bernthal is another one. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He plays the brother of Agamemnon, and he has his own kingdom. He helps kind of give more information to Telemachus about his father and what kind of man he is. His character was interesting because he comes off very intense, which is, if you need someone to play an intense character, that's your guy. But it seems like he cared about Odysseus. He's cares for Telemachus in a way, but he also sometimes comes off as a douchebag. It was a very interesting character, but sometimes I just couldn't help but feel like, I'm watching John Bernthal. Sometimes I couldn't help feel like, I'm watching Anne Hathaway. But like, they all do good, but it is very Hollywood. It's different than some of these other films where we've gotten some new fresh faces, particularly in the horror scene. So there were some times where I was like, okay, that takes me out. I'm getting taken out of the film just a little bit just because there's so much star power and I can't help but see the stars, right? That's like a little mini critique from me. But it's a quality Christopher Nolan film. I'm surprised so many people with his reputation thought that this was just going to be a big flop. From my research, I believe that this has so far done internationally a little over 140 million at the box office with a budget of 250 plus million. I think they're doing well so far. I'm really excited to see and interested to see how this film does after its second weekend at the box office. I want to see if this film is going to succeed, despite what a lot of the negative criticism said before the film even came out. Or is it going to have a lot of that good word of mouth, similar to, say, Obsession is the most recent one I could think of, or Project Hail Mary. I mean, I think it's good enough to continue to do well. And listen, I think this is going to be a good movie, a good experience for most people if you are not hung up on historical inaccuracies of casting choices, armor, things like that. If you're somebody that's like, that's just going to be a deal breaker for you, I doubt you're going to enjoy this almost 3-hour film about, of Christopher Nolan's reimagining. But I think this film is also emotionally engaging, and that's why moments where Odysseus does return and finally, reclaim his home, although he does go into exile with Penelope, but then Telemachus becomes king, that, like, the build up to that was great. Family, home, loyalty, and sacrifice are all things that stood out to me. The last thing, and I didn't want to forget this, forgive me for having such a long review this time, but there's a lot I wanted to talk about. The Trojan horse scene. I never thought about how, while trapped in the Trojan horse, you're going to have water coming into it, which some men, they show drowning as they stay inside this Trojan horse for days. 4 days. No food. When John Bernthal's character is reciting this, he's like, it smells like shit. It smells like piss. I swear I saw one of the men throw up in the water that they're all in a human soup in. And they're doing this just to get the drop on Troy. And we learned that it was none other than Odysseus' idea for the Trojan horse. However, he broke Zeus's law as well when doing this. He broke something sacred, right? Sinon is killed in the beginning of the film. And when they travel to Hades, Sinon reveals that she didn't know the full plan, and that there are a lot of men who have felt dishonored by Odysseus, and are unhappy with him, I suppose, in the afterlife, right? By the way, the safest place they go in the film is freaking Hades, which is insane. But literally, everywhere else they go was not safe. Anyway, that scene, Odysseus sees what he has done, right? They had common gods, and that's why Ithaca, some of the Ithacan soldiers, at first stopped one of the other soldiers from, like, causing further harm to Sinon, although they already pierced her with arrows. But anyway, Odysseus becomes the thing that his, like Zeus's law and things, I think, try to prevent, right? He forgot the values of hospitality, right? Him and his men are going from island to island, burning things down, stealing from people's homes, taking their food, killing their livestock, invading and pillaging and disrupting. They are the men of the sea who would not show hospitality to others. And the only one that realized truly what was going on while everyone else is celebrating this victory is Odysseus. Realizes that he's probably changed the landscape of things for a while. Okay? Because without that sacredness and that moral code, Odysseus and his men are no better than the suitors. No? And I don't know. This movie had a lot to say, and I thought it was really, really good. I'm already at 27 minutes and probably haven't even covered a lot of the things that go on in this film, but I feel like I covered a lot of the things I wanted to cover. My final rating would be, I'd give it a 9 out of 10. It was really, really good. I'd love to see this again in IMAX or 40X, but I do not want to take more of your time, guys. Thank you for watching, especially if you stayed until the end. What did you think of Christopher Nolan's